Deep beneath the rugged peaks of Silver Creek, Colorado, secrets stir in the silent dark, a hidden truth that defies time and reason. Hit subscribe to join the quest for answers and uncover the mystery behind Project Orion and the preserved man whose existence could shatter everything we know about life and death. At dawn, when the sun's pale light barely reached over the rugged peaks surrounding Silver Creek, Colorado, a sense of quiet anticipation stirred within the aging mining town. The town, once a booming relic of the gold rush era, had faded into obscurity as its veins of gold were exhausted. But a recent geological survey funded by a private corporation had ignited a spark of hope. Rare earth minerals lay hidden in the abandoned shafts, promising not only new wealth but a resurgence for men who had dedicated their lives to the rock. Dan Baxter, a seasoned miner in his mid-40s whose weathered face and steady hands testified to decades underground, prepared for another long day in the dark corridors of the earth. That morning, Dan and his partner Mark Jensen descended into a recently blasted tunnel. Their every step echoed through narrow passages where stone dust and machinery oil mingled in the stale air. They had become accustomed to the rhythmic clatter of metal against rock, a cadence that turned monotonous tasks into a kind of grim meditation. The silence was interrupted when Mark's pickaxe, once rhythmically striking the rock, suddenly produced an unexpected, crisp metallic ring. Dan's instincts flared. He signaled for Mark to hold still. Kneeling in the dusty gloom, Dan brushed away layers of debris with his gloved hand. His heart pounded as he uncovered a smooth, dark surface unlike any natural rock formation. The metal shimmered under the beam of his helmet light, its texture cool and unervingly perfect. Whispers began among the crew as they circled around Dan's discovery. Jim Henderson, the rugged shift supervisor whose scarred face had seen more than a share of hard labor, joined the circle. He peered closely at the exposed surface and muttered about its unnatural smoothness, noting that the metal showed no signs of rust and bore precise, almost geometric lines. The initial excitement quickly shifted to caution as Henderson decided that the section be cordoned off until further tests could be performed. With engineers being summoned to the scene, Dan and Mark found themselves reassigned to another tunnel, a decision that would leave them with a nagging sense of unfinished business and questions that could not be easily answered. As they left the site, the strange object lingered in their minds, its silent presence a harbinger of mysteries yet to be unraveled. In that moment, deep beneath the surface of Silver Creek, something had been awakened, a secret that had lain dormant for decades, waiting for the right hands to disturb it. The unexpected discovery stirred the miners' collective memory of old legends and unspoken fears. In the cavernous depths, the object glowed with an otherworldly aura, its metallic sheen promising answers that could change the course of history or unleash dangers beyond comprehension. With every step they took away from that mysterious relic, a subtle shift occurred both in the rock and in the hearts of those who had borne witness. The earth, it seemed, had decided to whisper its hidden truth, and the journey to unravel that mystery had only just begun. In the hours following the initial discovery, the atmosphere around the site grew charged with tension and speculation. The engineers, clad in bright orange vests, arrived and immediately began scrutinizing the strange metal embedded in the ancient rock. They used portable scanners and delicate tools to map the surface, revealing deliberate patterns that defied the randomness of natural erosion. Every etched line and geometric scratch on the metal was measured with clinical precision, suggesting that this was not merely a piece of forgotten machinery, but something far older and far more enigmatic. Jim Henderson's gruff orders echoed through the tunnel as he directed the engineers to proceed slowly. "This isn't bedrock, and it's not part of our equipment," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of experience and authority. The metal, now revealed to be rectangular in shape and about 8 feet embedded within the rock, seemed almost deliberate. A perfectly sealed container designed by hands with precise intent. Dan Baxter watched from the periphery, his instincts torn between professional curiosity and a deep-seated warning. The miners exchanged uneasy glances. Their lifelong familiarity with the dark, unyielding tunnels did little to prepare them for something that felt as if it had been implanted there by design rather than by nature. As the engineers continued their delicate work, the object's true form began to emerge. Its edges were unnaturally straight, and beneath the metallic surface, symbols began to appear. At first, they seemed like accidental scratches, but as more debris was cleared away, the designs took on an unmistakable form, cryptic, almost alien in nature. The sense of wonder mingled with dread as each new detail came into focus. Henderson's face, lined with years of labor and hardship, betrayed a mix of disbelief and cautious excitement. "It's been here a long time," he murmured, tracing his finger along the exposed metal. "Something, or someone, left this behind for a reason." The discovery quickly drew a crowd of miners and engineers alike, all clamoring for an explanation. Rumors began to spread like wildfire. Some whispered that the object might be a relic from the early days of mining, a piece of equipment from a long-forgotten project. Others speculated it could be connected to the old legends of the region, stories passed down through generations about cursed treasures and mysterious guardians of the earth. Dan, however, felt an inexplicable pull of foreboding. He recalled old tales of miners encountering forces beyond their comprehension and knew in his gut that this was no ordinary find. With the engineers determined to conduct further tests, and Henderson instructing everyone to maintain order, the mysterious container was sealed off from immediate exploration. Yet, as Dan and Mark returned to their assigned tasks, the image of the metallic surface remained etched in their minds. The object had set off a chain of events that would soon ripple far beyond the confines of Silver Creek. In the darkness of that mine, the ancient relic seemed to pulse with a quiet energy, a silent promise of revelations and risks that would soon compel them all to confront the hidden past of their town. And somewhere beneath layers of rock and time, the secret of the metallic veil waited, poised to change everything. 3 days later, an air of expectancy swept through Silver Creek as a specialized team of investigators arrived at the site. Led by the methodical and determined Dr. Howard McKenzie, the team was comprised of scientists, military liaisons, and technical experts. They came with state-of-the-art equipment designed to analyze materials far beyond the ordinary. And as they set up in the tunnel, their presence immediately elevated the tension among the miners who had once called these passages home. Dr. McKenzie, a man in his early 50s with a calm, authoritative demeanor, took charge of the operation. He meticulously examined the mysterious container, running handheld scanners along its enigmatic surface. The digital readouts on his tablet began to reveal data that baffled even his experienced colleagues. The alloy composing the container was unlike anything in known metallurgy, a blend of elements that seemed modern yet curiously out of place in an object that appeared to have been entombed for decades. "This is not what I expected," he confided to his assistant, his brow furrowed in thought as he compared the readings with historical data. As the team continued their methodical analysis, the container's shape became increasingly clear. It was a coffin-like structure, its lid sealed with a series of grooves that hinted at a hidden latch mechanism. The realization that they were dealing with something more than a mere artifact sent ripples of unease among the gathered crowd. The miners, who had witnessed countless hours of grueling labor underground, could now sense that the object before them was a portal to secrets that spanned generations. Within the controlled chaos of the tunnel, heated discussions broke out among the experts. Some argued that the object might be an experimental piece of Cold War technology, an artifact left behind from classified military projects. Others believed it to be a relic from a bygone era, possibly even linked to the legends of human preservation experiments dating back to the early 1900s. Amid these debates, Dan stood silently at the back, his eyes tracing the intricate patterns on the metal. His gut told him that the truth lay far beyond the realm of conventional explanations. Despite the swirling theories, one fact remained undeniable. The container was a sealed relic of profound mystery. Henderson's firm order to restrict access only added to the intrigue, leaving Dan and his fellow miners with more questions than answers. As the investigation continued, Dr. McKenzie and his team carefully mapped the engraved symbols, their sharp minds trying to decipher the coded language of a forgotten past. With every scanned line, the narrative of the object grew more complex, a story of secrecy, advanced technology, and perhaps an experiment that defied the natural order. In that moment, Silver Creek was transformed from a sleepy mining town into the epicenter of an unfolding enigma. The air was thick with anticipation and trepidation, as every person present wondered what it would mean to fully unveil the secrets contained within the mysterious coffin. The stage was set for revelations that would soon challenge the very fabric of their understanding of history, technology, and human existence. Under strict orders to proceed with utmost caution, Dr. Mackenzie's team prepared for the delicate task of opening the mysterious container. In a scene reminiscent of high-stakes archaeological expeditions, the engineers assembled around the object in the tunnel. Specialized cutting tools, precision lasers, and delicate instruments were readied as the team meticulously marked the seams of the coffin-like container. Every movement was measured. Every sound in the silent darkness amplified the palpable tension. Dan and Mark, now reassigned but unable to shake the lure of the unknown, watched intently from a safe distance. As the cutting tool was activated, a thin line of light began to slice into the container's metal. The sound was hauntingly mechanical, a prolonged, low groan that reverberated off the walls, mingling with the quiet murmurs of the gathered team. For nearly an hour, the methodical process continued. The tool meticulously carved away at the metallic surface, inch by inch revealing the secrets that had been guarded for so long. Finally, with a resonant creak and a rush of settling debris, the lid shifted, sliding open as if it had been waiting patiently for this very moment. The beam of the engineer's flashlights revealed an interior that defied expectations. There, floating in a crystal-clear, viscous liquid, lay a man. His form was eerily preserved, a still figure clad in a uniform that blended the aesthetics of mid-century military attire with details that suggested an experimental design far ahead of its time. The fluid surrounding him was unlike any preservative known to science. It shimmered with an inner light, as if charged with energy. Dr. Mackenzie stepped forward, his voice barely a whisper. "This isn't just a body, it's a time capsule." His careful examination revealed that the man's features were unblemished by decay. His skin had the pallor of someone caught in a perpetual state of suspended animation, and his lips bore a faint blue hue, a sign that the strange liquid had somehow altered his biological makeup. The team recorded every detail, their devices beeping and whirring as they collected data that would soon challenge the boundaries of modern science. As the experts conferred in hushed tones, a palpable sense of awe and dread swept over the assembly. This was not a relic of an old mining accident or a forgotten laborer caught in the collapse of a tunnel. It was something entirely different. The man, preserved with such unnerving perfection, seemed to be a witness to events lost in time. The symbolism etched onto his uniform and the peculiar properties of the surrounding fluid hinted at a narrative that stretched beyond mere historical artifact into the realm of experimental human preservation. Henderson's earlier caution now transformed into stern urgency. "Seal off this section immediately. We need to analyze this in a controlled environment," he ordered, as security personnel moved to barricade the tunnel entrance. Dan felt a deep, foreboding chill settle in his bones. The unsealing of this container had not only disturbed the quiet of Silver Creek, but had ignited a chain reaction that threatened to expose secrets buried far deeper than the mine itself. In that moment, the line between science and myth blurred. The preserved man, as if caught in a timeless slumber, posed questions that no one had the answers to. What experiment had been conducted so long ago? Who was this man, and why had he been entrusted with such a bizarre method of preservation? The unsealing marked the beginning of a journey into a past that was as dangerous as it was mysterious, a journey that would pull everyone involved into a vortex of conspiracy, scientific intrigue, and the unsettling realization that some truths were meant to remain hidden. Dr. Mackenzie and his team, now isolated within the fortified tunnel, embarked on the painstaking process of examining the preserved man. The liquid enveloping him was slowly drained with a portable suction pump, its controlled rhythm echoing the beating of anxious hearts. As the fluid receded, every detail of the man's appearance was laid bare, a uniform meticulously preserved, skin unmarred by time, and a haunting stillness that made it seem as if he might awaken at any moment. His eyes, though closed, carried an unfathomable depth, as if hiding secrets of an era long past. The researchers gathered around, their instruments poised to capture data that defied conventional wisdom. Dr. McKenzie noted the anomaly in the biological readings. The man's cells were active, his metabolic processes undisturbed despite the prolonged suspension. His assistant carefully documented the phenomenon, remarking that the preservation method appeared to combine both modern technology and unknown elements, an amalgamation of futuristic science with a design that felt ancient. Within the sterile environment of the tunnel, theories began to emerge. Some speculated that the man might have been part of an experimental program from the Cold War, a test subject of an initiative that aimed to preserve soldiers indefinitely. Others whispered of secret government projects, initiatives so classified that even the notion of their existence bordered on myth. Henderson's stern expression belied the myriad questions swirling in his mind. "This isn't something we should be tampering with," he cautioned, urging a balance between scientific inquiry and the inherent dangers of disturbing the past. Dan, who had lingered on the fringes of the investigation, felt an overwhelming sense of foreboding. His instincts screamed that this was not merely an accident of fate, but the culmination of decades of secrecy. The preserved man's uniform bore an insignia that no one could place, a symbol that hinted at clandestine projects and unspeakable experiments. As more of the man was exposed to the air, subtle changes took place. His skin darkened ever so slightly, and the faint blue hue of his lips deepened, signaling that the very act of uncovering him was triggering an unknown reaction. The tension in the tunnel escalated as Dr. McKenzie's team discussed the next steps. "We need to secure this specimen and transport him to a controlled laboratory," McKenzie declared, his voice resolute. The group agreed that further analysis was imperative, but the process would have to be carried out with the utmost care. They carefully wrapped the man in thermally insulated sheets and prepared him for extraction. Every move was executed with the gravity of those who understood that history was on their hands. In the midst of scientific fascination, a deeper, more personal unease gripped Dan. The man before them was more than a scientific anomaly. He was a silent witness to secrets that transcended time. And as the team worked to preserve the body's integrity, Dan couldn't shake the feeling that by unearthing this relic, they had opened a door that should have remained forever closed. With the preserved man carefully wrapped and the tunnel sealed off by a contingent of security personnel, the stage was set for the next phase of the investigation. Dr. McKenzie swiftly arranged for a specialized transport, a black SUV with tinted windows and armed guards to ensure that the fragile specimen reached a secure laboratory in Boulder without interference. The extraction was conducted under the watchful eyes of both scientists and hardened miners, each of them silently acknowledging that what they had witnessed was far beyond anything they had ever imagined. Dan Baxter, still reeling from the shock of the unsealing, watched as the SUV's tail lights faded into the distance along the winding, treacherous roads of the Colorado mountains. The vehicle, laden with high-tech equipment and the carefully preserved body, carried with it not only the secrets of a mysterious past, but also the heavy burden of a future that threatened to unravel the very fabric of what was known. In the transport, Dr. McKenzie reviewed his notes with a mix of excitement and apprehension, meticulously cross-referencing the enigmatic data gathered from the tunnel with historical records and classified memos that had only recently surfaced. At the extraction site, a flurry of activity ensued. Technicians prepared the necessary instruments to maintain the body's optimal temperature and integrity during the journey. The eerie silence of the mine had given way to the controlled chaos of scientific urgency. As the SUV began its journey, Dan's thoughts drifted back to the mysterious container and the chilling realization that the object had been hidden away for a reason. With every mile traveled, the landscape of Silver Creek receded into the background, replaced by dark, twisting mountain roads that seemed to echo the uncertainty of the road ahead. Within the secure laboratory in Boulder, a team of top-tier scientists awaited the arrival of the specimen. Their facility, hidden from public scrutiny and equipped with state-of-the-art research tools, promised an environment where every aspect of the preserved man could be studied in detail. Dr. McKenzie's voice over the phone was measured and calm as he updated the lab's director on the status of the extraction. "We're en route with a find that could alter our understanding of human preservation," he stated, his tone hinting at the magnitude of the discovery. Back in Silver Creek, as miners returned to their routines, an unspoken tension gripped the town. Even though work resumed and the daily grind continued, every miner felt the weight of the secret they were forced to carry. The local rumor mill churned with wild theories. Some speculated it was a relic of a covert government experiment from decades past, while others believed it might have ties to supernatural legends that had haunted the region for generations. Dan's own heart was heavy with the knowledge that the extraction was not merely a transfer of a scientific specimen, but a harbinger of deeper, more dangerous mysteries. As night fell over the mountains, the SUV's steady hum became a distant memory. Inside the secure facility in Boulder, the preserved man lay on a refrigerated table, surrounded by blinking monitors and the hushed murmur of urgent discussions. Dr. McKenzie meticulously recorded the initial findings, noting every irregularity and anomaly. The question that haunted him was not simply how the man had been preserved so perfectly, but why he had been hidden away. The answer, it seemed, lay buried in layers of classified experiments and government secrets, a narrative that was only beginning to take shape. With the extraction complete and the specimen safely in transit, the investigators felt the crushing weight of responsibility. They had crossed a threshold, and the delicate balance between scientific discovery and the ominous past was now at risk of unraveling completely. And so, as the lab's secure doors closed behind the SUV, the mystery of the frozen man continued to grow, an enigma that would soon demand answers from those brave enough to pursue the truth. Inside the low-profile, high-security laboratory in Boulder, a controlled hush settled over the team as they began their detailed analysis of the preserved man. Dr. McKenzie and his colleagues worked with careful deliberation, aware that every measurement and sample might hold the key to unlocking secrets decades, or even half a century, in the making. The lab was a stark contrast to the rugged tunnels of Silver Creek. Here, pristine equipment and digital monitors replaced picks and shovels, and every movement was recorded for posterity. The scientists first focused on the fluid, the mysterious substance that had so impeccably preserved the man's body. Using a suite of advanced chemical analyzers, they discovered that the liquid was composed of compounds that did not match any known preservative formula. Its properties were unusual. When exposed to oxygen, the fluid's structure changed subtly, and when it came into contact with human tissue, it was absorbed almost instantaneously, leaving behind no trace. Dr. McKenzie noted in his log, "This is not a conventional preservative. It appears to be a biotechnological marvel that defies established science." While the chemical composition of the liquid provided clues, it was the man's uniform that drew the team's keen attention next. Detailed scans revealed an insignia on the lapel, a symbol that was both archaic and futuristic, combining elements of military tradition with cryptic geometric designs. Cross-referencing historical records and internal military memos from the early 1950s, the team stumbled upon an obscure reference to Project Orion. Official records had dismissed it as a brief experimental foray into nuclear-powered spacecraft, but the insignia suggested a connection to long-term human preservation experiments. This revelation ignited fervent debate among the scientists. Some posited that the preserved man might have been an early test subject in an ambitious government project, while others considered the possibility of a covert experiment that had been intentionally buried away. As the day wore on, the lab's atmosphere grew increasingly tense. The team encountered anomalies in the preserved man's biological data. His vital signs, though recorded as stable, carried subtle fluctuations that defied normal expectations for someone in suspended animation. Dr. McKenzie speculated that the preservation process might be maintaining not just the physical form, but also some level of metabolic activity that was yet to be fully understood. "We are looking at a convergence of advanced science and perhaps an entirely new paradigm in biological stasis," he commented during a brief meeting with his senior colleagues. Amidst the scientific analysis, whispers of conspiracy began to circulate. One of the junior researchers uncovered a reference in an internal military document from 1953 that mentioned a transportation convoy carrying classified experimental cargo. The document was fragmented and cryptic, but it hinted at a mission gone awry, a mission that involved human subjects, experimental technology, and the dire need to keep the project's details hidden from public knowledge. The implication was clear. The preserved man was more than an isolated case. He was part of a broader narrative involving clandestine government experiments that had long been buried by official secrecy. While the lab buzzed with intense scrutiny, the team's lead technician noticed something even more alarming. Surveillance footage from the night before, taken by an auxiliary camera in the lab's corridor, showed an unaccounted-for figure moving furtively past the secure area. No alarm had been triggered, yet the sighting suggested that someone, or something, might be intent on ensuring that these findings remained hidden. Dr. Mackenzie's mind raced with possibilities. Was there an effort to cover up the experiment, or worse, a sinister force determined to silence the truth? As dusk approached outside the lab's reinforced windows, the investigators agreed that the next steps must be taken with extreme caution. The preservation method, the mysterious insignia, and the covert military references formed a tapestry of clues that hinted at a conspiracy spanning decades. With heavy hearts and determined resolve, the team prepared detailed reports and samples for further analysis. Every specimen was carefully sealed, every observation documented, all in the hope of uncovering the full story behind the preserved man and the shadowy experiment known only as Project Orion. In that moment of scientific discovery, the truth was both tantalizingly close and maddeningly elusive. The laboratory had become a battleground between the relentless pursuit of knowledge and the forces determined to keep these secrets entombed in darkness. And as the night deepened, so too did the mystery. A mystery that would soon draw in not only the investigators, but also those with more dangerous motives lurking in the periphery of power. The following morning brought an unsettling calm to the laboratory in Boulder. Dr. Mackenzie arrived early, ready to follow up on the night's discoveries, only to find that an inexplicable void had replaced the familiar bustle of research activity. His heart sank as he learned that one of the key members of his team, the brilliant and meticulous technician who had first noticed the odd surveillance footage, was nowhere to be found. The investigation revealed that Mackenzie's colleague had vanished without a trace. His workstation lay undisturbed, his last recorded notes half-finished, and his phone remained on the desk, silent and abandoned. A hush fell over the lab as security reviewed the incident. The senior management quickly locked down the facility, citing concerns over a possible breach. Dr. Mackenzie, however, sensed that this disappearance was no random act of misfortune. It was deliberate. The fragmented security footage showed the missing technician leaving the lab at 1:13 a.m., yet his car was still in the parking lot. The implications were chilling. Someone had orchestrated this vanishing to send a message. Rumors swirled that there were forces beyond the scientific community, powerful entities who preferred that certain secrets remain hidden. In a tense meeting convened behind closed doors, a shadowy government official appeared before the assembled scientists. His presence was commanding, his words measured. "You must cease all further inquiries into the Project Orion findings," he instructed, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. "Certain discoveries are not meant for public knowledge." His directive was accompanied by an unnerving promise that any further attempts to uncover the truth would be met with severe consequences. Dr. Mackenzie felt a chill run down his spine. The disappearance of his colleague was the first sign of a broader effort to suppress the investigation, and now the entire team was caught in the crosshairs of a covert cover-up. While some researchers argued that the vanishing might have been an unfortunate accident, others feared that it was an ominous prelude to more drastic measures. Dr. Mackenzie found himself torn between the pursuit of truth and the looming threat posed by those determined to bury the secrets of Project Orion. With every passing hour, the lab's secure corridors felt less like a sanctuary for scientific inquiry and more like a trap set by unseen adversaries. The gravity of the situation was underscored by the missing technician's final, unfinished notes, a cryptic jumble of numbers, sketches of symbols, and ominous phrases hinting at hidden experiments and unauthorized interventions. Amid this tense atmosphere, Dr. Mackenzie realized that he could no longer trust the security of the facility. Every shadow and every unexpected sound fueled his growing sense of paranoia. He discreetly contacted a few trusted colleagues, urging them to remain vigilant and to back up their data in case further attempts were made to erase their work. In hushed tones and furtive glances, the team acknowledged that they were now operating under conditions where the truth was not only dangerous but also a potential liability. Outside the lab, the news of the vanishing spread quietly through the corridors of power. Dr. Mackenzie's personal resolve hardened. He vowed that the truth behind the preserved man, the enigmatic liquid, and the mysterious insignia would not be silenced, no matter the cost. Yet, as he stared at the empty workstation of his missing colleague, he couldn't shake the feeling that he, too, was now a target. The forces that had intervened to cover up the experiment were closing in, and any further pursuit of the mystery could lead to dire consequences. In the quiet moments before dusk, Dr. Mackenzie took stock of the situation. The laboratory, once a beacon of scientific hope, now pulsed with a dangerous urgency. The disappearance of one of their own had shattered the veneer of control, leaving behind a stark reminder that in the realm of clandestine experiments, the line between discovery and peril was frighteningly thin. The next steps would need to be taken not just with scientific rigor, but with an acute awareness of the risks, a gamble between uncovering the truth and ensuring the safety of those who dared to ask the questions. Back in Silver Creek, life at the mining site had taken on a hushed quality. The once bustling tunnels now felt deserted, as if the earth itself was trying to keep its secrets hidden. A series of government vehicles, their presence unmistakably authoritative, had arrived at the mine. Jim Henderson, who had always been the steadfast overseer of the crew, now stood rigidly at the entrance as armed agents methodically secured the perimeter. The message was clear and unyielding. No one was to speak of what had been found, and the tunnel was to be sealed off permanently. The miners, whose daily labor had always been laced with a mix of camaraderie and stoic resignation, now found themselves bound by an unspoken pact of silence. Whispers among the workers suggested that the discovery was not only scientifically significant but also politically explosive. Stories of secret experiments and lost convoys from the 1950s took on a new urgency as rumors spread like wildfire. Mark Jensen confided in Dan Baxter that he had heard unsettling stories, tales of a hidden project, one that had been buried with the preserved man. "We were never supposed to see any of this," Mark said in a hushed tone, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Dan could only nod, his mind filled with the images of that otherworldly coffin and the eerie calm of the man inside it. With the mine placed under a strict lockdown, the government's intervention was both swift and ruthless. Heavy machinery began to collapse sections of the tunnel, filling the space with layers of rock that obscured all traces of the discovery. Henderson's once familiar domain was being erased by a deliberate cover-up, as if nature itself were cooperating in the effort to bury the truth. The miners returned to their routine work, but the camaraderie that once lightened their arduous tasks was now overshadowed by fear and uncertainty. Every time a rumble of machinery echoed through the tunnels, each worker felt the weight of the secret pressing down on them. Dan Baxter found himself unable to shake the feeling that the cover-up was more than a bureaucratic decision. It was an effort to protect something far more sinister. His gut churned with the realization that what had been uncovered was not merely an ancient relic, but a critical piece of a much larger puzzle. Late at night, in the quiet solitude of his modest home, Dan pored over old maps and faded documents from the town's history, searching for any reference to the mysterious insignia or hints of a government project. What he discovered was both intriguing and alarming. Fragments of memos from the early 1950s that mentioned Project Orion and a covert transportation convoy that had vanished without a trace. Even as Henderson's orders for silence resonated through the town, Dan's determination only grew. The miners' whispered confessions and the cold efficiency of the government agents left him with a single inescapable truth: the story of the preserved man was far from over. In a quiet, defiant act, Dan began gathering his own evidence, documenting every anomalous detail he could recall from that fateful day in the tunnel. The more he uncovered, the more it became evident that Silver Creek was not simply a forgotten mining town, but a repository of secrets too dangerous to be allowed to surface. Meanwhile, the government's presence in Silver Creek tightened like a noose around the neck of the community. A convoy of vehicles patrolled the roads, and local residents began to whisper that even the wind carried messages of caution. The mine, once a symbol of the town's legacy, had transformed into a tomb of secrets, its every rock and every shaft now imbued with a warning: forget what you saw, forget what you know. For Dan, however, the call of truth was irresistible. Even as he balanced the peril of his own investigation against the oppressive cover-up, he knew that the mysteries hidden beneath Silver Creek would not stay buried forever. As the days turned into weeks, Dan Baxter's personal investigation grew bolder and more dangerous. Determined to unearth the full story behind the preserved man and the strange Project Orion, he began combing through old records, secret memos, and local legends. His nights were spent poring over handwritten documents in the dim light of his kitchen, and his days were spent discreetly revisiting the mine's periphery. But it wasn't long before Dan realized that he was being followed. Late one evening, while driving along a lonely back road far from Silver Creek, he noticed a black sedan with tinted windows persistently tailing him. The car's presence was ominous, a silent threat that he was being watched. At first, Dan tried to shake off the unease, attributing the car to a coincidence. But as he drove through twisting mountain roads and desolate stretches of highway, the sedan's headlights remained fixed on him. It wasn't long before an anonymous phone call confirmed his suspicions. A gravelly voice, masked by urgency and familiarity, warned, "They're watching everyone from that mine. You need to disappear." The caller then added, "I was once in your shoes, Dan. I know what it means to be pursued by those who want the truth to stay hidden." The cryptic message chilled him to the core, confirming that his investigation had attracted dangerous attention. Haunted by the silent threat, Dan doubled his efforts. He meticulously retraced his steps, looking for clues in dusty archives and forgotten local records that could explain the black sedan's relentless pursuit. Every scrap of evidence he uncovered seemed to point to a network of individuals with vested interests in keeping the secrets of Project Orion under lock and key, a conspiracy stretching back decades. His inquiries led him to an old, disused library where yellowed documents hinted at the existence of a covert government project designed to preserve and potentially resurrect elite soldiers. The discovery painted a picture of a past where experiments in human stasis were not only real, but were intended to provide a strategic advantage in future conflicts. Yet with every revelation came the nagging fear that the forces behind the cover-up were closing in on him. The more Dan uncovered, the more he realized that he was navigating a labyrinth of peril and deceit. His heart pounded every time he glanced at his rearview mirror, half expecting to see the black sedan creeping closer. Determined not to be cowed into silence, he began to document his findings in meticulous detail. Late into the night, Dan would record audio logs and take photographs of documents and landmarks that had once been ignored by the world. Despite the ever-present danger, the chase became a catalyst for his relentless quest for truth. Dan forged secret alliances with locals who remembered the old days of Silver Creek, exchanging whispered information over cups of strong coffee in dim diners. Every piece of evidence added weight to his growing suspicion. The preserved man was not an isolated phenomenon, but part of a broader, more ominous narrative involving government experimentation and classified projects. His determination only hardened as the mysterious sedan's presence grew more brazen, its headlights a constant reminder that the truth he sought was worth risking everything for. One crisp, moonlit night, while driving along a deserted mountain road, Dan was forced to make a split-second decision. The sedan suddenly accelerated, its presence undeniable as it closed the gap between them. With no clear escape route in sight, Dan took a sharp, risky turn down a narrow, unlit dirt road. The truck's engine roared as he pushed it to its limits, the vehicle bouncing violently over uneven terrain. The tension in that moment was palpable, a desperate race between a man determined to expose the truth and the shadowy forces intent on silencing him. As the chase unfolded, every twist and turn of the road felt like a descent deeper into a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of power. Dan's eyes burned with determination as he vowed that no matter the cost, the secrets of Project Orion and the fate of the preserved man would be revealed. The relentless pursuit marked a turning point in his journey, a dangerous gambit that would either uncover the hidden truths of Silver Creek or plunge him into irreversible darkness. Hiding out in a nondescript motel under a fake name, Dan spent long hours reviewing every scrap of evidence he'd gathered. With each piece of documentation and every whispered account from old-timers in Silver Creek, the outline of a dangerous truth began to emerge. Project Orion, once dismissed in official records as a failed attempt at nuclear-powered spacecraft, now took on a far more sinister meaning. The preserved man, with his cryptic insignia and unnerving state of suspended animation, appeared to be part of a covert experiment designed to preserve elite soldiers for future conflicts. A secret program whose true purpose had been deliberately concealed. In a cramped, dimly lit room, Dan pored over faded photographs and scanned documents, his mind racing as he connected fragments of a hidden past. An old military memo from 1953 mentioned a missing transportation convoy carrying classified experimental cargo. The clues painted a picture of a government desperate to safeguard a breakthrough that could revolutionize, or devastate, the nature of warfare. Every new discovery fueled Dan's resolve, even as he risked attracting more dangerous attention. The persistent presence of that black sedan, now a symbol of the shadowy forces determined to silence him, served as a constant reminder of the peril that lay ahead. As Dan's investigation deepened, he managed to contact a trusted friend from Silver Creek, a retired miner with first-hand memories of the town's storied past. In whispered conversations over secure lines, his friend recalled legends of experiments conducted in secret and warnings to forget what you saw. These recollections, combined with the mounting evidence from government documents and the mysterious findings in Boulder, forced Dan to confront a horrifying possibility. The preserved man was not merely a scientific anomaly, but a living relic of an experiment designed to defy the natural course of time. His cells, his unaging flesh, and the unnerving perfection of his form all testified to a technology far beyond anything the public was ever meant to know. Emboldened by the dangerous truth emerging from his investigation, Dan began compiling his evidence into a cohesive narrative that could expose the conspiracy. But just as he was ready to go public, a cryptic message arrived, a warning to abandon his inquiry or face dire consequences. The message, delivered in terse language and laced with menace, left no doubt that the powerful forces behind Project Orion were mobilizing to silence any dissent. In that fraught moment, Dan made a choice. Rather than retreat in fear, he decided to push forward, determined that the story of the preserved man and the dark secrets of Project Orion would not be buried again. With every piece of evidence in his possession, he planned his next move, one that would take him deep into the heart of the clandestine operation. The dangerous truth was now too large to ignore, and Dan knew that if he did not act, the revelations would vanish into the shadows forever. As dawn broke over the rugged Colorado landscape, Dan Baxter prepared for the final leg of his journey, a descent into the very heart of the conspiracy that had haunted him for weeks. In the solitude of a remote safe house, he meticulously organized his notes, photographs, and the damning documents that linked the preserved man to Project Orion. Every scrap of evidence was a thread in a tapestry of secrets, and now, with government agents on his tail and the oppressive silence of Silver Creek echoing in his mind, Dan knew there was no turning back. In a moment of grim determination, he contacted Dr. Mackenzie, whose own investigation had been upended by the disappearance of his colleague. The two arranged to meet in a secluded location, away from prying eyes, to combine their findings and plan their next steps. Their rendezvous was tense. Both men understood that they were now in possession of information that could upend established narratives about military experiments and human preservation. Over hushed conversations in a dimly lit abandoned warehouse, they reviewed the evidence once more. Dr. Mackenzie revealed that further tests had confirmed the unearthly properties of the preservation fluid, and that the mysterious insignia on the uniform matched secret research from decades past. The implications were staggering. The preserved man was part of an experiment that could potentially redefine the boundaries of life and death. As they spoke, distant headlights pierced the darkness outside, and both men instinctively fell silent. The sound of tires on gravel was a stark reminder that they were not alone. Their conversation was cut short by the arrival of armed agents, the very same forces that had stalked Dan on the winding mountain roads. With no time to lose, Dan and Dr. Mackenzie gathered their documents and fled into the night. The ensuing chase was a desperate scramble through deserted streets and over rough terrain, a final bid to escape the clutches of those determined to keep the truth buried. In the chaos of their flight, as government vehicles closed in, Dan's resolve only hardened. He knew that what he had discovered was not merely a relic of the past, but a warning for the future. The preserved man, suspended in time and shrouded in secrecy, was a testament to the lengths to which powerful forces would go to control knowledge. And as Dan and Dr. Mackenzie vanished into the darkness, they carried with them the evidence of a truth that, if revealed, could change the course of history. In the quiet aftermath of that final descent, as the safe house fell silent once more, Dan reflected on the journey that had led him from the depths of Silver Creek to the dangerous edges of conspiracy. The secrets that had been unearthed would forever haunt him, A reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, and some truths are too perilous to see the light of day. Yet, in his heart, Dan knew that the story was far from over. The preserved man, the enigmatic Project Orion, and the relentless pursuit of forbidden knowledge had set into motion events that would ripple through time. And even as government agents continued their covert efforts to erase the past, Dan vowed that he would never forget the truth, a truth that, no matter how deeply it was buried, would one day demand to be heard. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment to share your thoughts. Your support helps bring more exciting stories to life. Stay tuned for the next adventure. See you in the next video.